So that was the wrap up of the big section, How Do Cells Differ? One of the longest sections in this whole lecture. If you made it through that, we're basically smooth sailing from now on. Just got a couple short sections on mutation and mutability, which is just an introduction to my work and what I do, to give you a glimpse of what some graduate research is at the school. So on the topic of mutation, we all know that mutation itself is random. You can't predict it. But the probability that a site mutates is different depending on where you are in the genome. Mutability is this concept of the probability of mutation. And mutability of one genetic site, for example on chromosome 1, might be different than the likelihood something will mutate on a different chromosome. And so there's many properties that can alter mutation rate or mutability. And the first one is the actual genetic code itself. This isn't that intuitive, but it's well known that cytosines and guanine nucleotides are actually way more likely to mutate than adenines and tyrosines. And so just the chemical nature of the nucleotides themselves influence how likely they are to mutate. So this leads to a lot of really cool patterns in the types of mutations we see, where a lot of mutations are more from C's and G's to A's and T's. The other property that can alter mutation rate is epigenetics and the level of expression. Any protein that interacts with DNA can potentially mutate it. Opening up, replicating, transcribing DNA all makes DNA vulnerable, and the interaction of expression or replication can actually alter and damage that DNA sequence. Also, the level of condensation we see with epigenetics can also affect mutation rate. So these are two pretty complex phenomena that are affecting how many mutations and what types of mutations we see. Another really complicated thing is that we've seen through this talk that epigenetics and expression are different depending on what tissue you're in. So for example, one area, the ABO gene, for example, the blood type gene, has different epigenetic condensation and maybe different expression in your blood cells versus your skin cells. And so that might lead to different types of mutations that accumulate in the blood versus the skin. And so the question really is what kinds of mutations occur in the body? Are they different between different tissues? And that's exactly what I study. I use bioinformatics and machine learning to understand how the different cellular environments that we see in each different tissue, how they cause different levels and types of mutation in different human tissues. And these have connotations for how cancers in different tissues form and also the inherent underlying mutations that occur in healthy tissues. And if any of this is interesting to you, my lab, you should reach out to Dr. Ness, as he's one of the experts in this field, and you should have a talk with him on about some of this stuff, because I'm always looking for new grad students. Just before we move on to how to get into grad school and potentially reaching out to professors and such, I do want to say that none of this is testable on this slide, but very cool, arguably, but you don't need to worry about mutability. But just keep in mind that mutability isn't equal, which I think is interesting. But now, if grad school is something that you're interested in, let's have a look at what it is and how to get into it. So, there's different kinds of grad school. There's professional and research. So let's talk about professional. You're basically taking courses, just like an undergrad. They are advanced. Professional will cost a lot of money per year. There's a tuition. But once you graduate, it's generally considered to increase employability. You're seen to be trained on skills, and depending on what you get your professional master's in, you generally can be employed pretty quickly. Research, however, is a different kind of grad school. You work under a professor pursuing a project of your shared interest. And so depending on if you do a master's or a PhD, the length differs. So in a master's, you're typically there for under 2 years, and that allows you to cover 1 to 2 topics. And you write a thesis for publication, whereas that's not necessarily a goal in professional. In research for PhD, you are there for 4 to 5 years. You're covering multiple topics and hopefully publishing multiple times and writing a dissertation which contains many chapters. And so in research there, your experience is less about coursework and more about doing research, interacting with your professor, writing, and doing novel research. It's also important to note that as a research graduate student, you are paid. It is technically full-time work being a research graduate student, so you are paid a livable wage. It's not too much, but you are paid for your work, whereas in professional, you are paying tuition to get in. And like I said, you do take a few courses, and your lifestyle is also your TAing often. And so in a professional, your lifestyle is more courses, whereas in research, you're doing the actual research with your professor, you're taking some courses, and you're TAing. And so depending on what's interesting to you, you should pursue, you could look into both, seeing which might fit your lifestyle a bit better if you want to do graduate research. Now, if either of these are interesting to you, the place to find information on graduate programs, especially at U of T, is just to look at the U of T website. So if ever you're interested in graduate school, just go to the website and go to the graduate department and you can see a bunch of programs. But before getting there, let's have a look at how to get into research. What are your initial steps now that you guys are in such an early stage? So the first one is definitely ROPs. This is the link to find the ROPs available at UTM. Basically, a research opportunity program is supervisors or professors, they offer projects that they'd like undergraduates help on, and undergraduates get a chance to do research in the lab. And so it's your first kind of basic experience with doing research firsthand. You get a course credit for this. This is a really great way to be in contact with professors who are doing research and to be a part of the research community. The next one is another course-based, Bio 41. This is a bit more advanced, as it's a formal undergraduate thesis project. So in ROP, you are doing work and you get some research experience. 41 is a bit more, the projects are a bit more advanced, so it's a bit more senior. Generally, they accept people in their 4th year. You work under professor. So a bit similar, but a bit more advanced. You can also volunteer for labs. It may seem daunting, but reaching out to supervisors, they do need help in labs. And so in case you have missed ROP deadline, so you can't get in, that's not the end of the road. Reach out to professors and see if there's any space in the lab just to help out in things in general. And so these 3 main things, what do they have in common? That you're interacting with your professors. I cannot stress this point enough. The whole point of research is that professors are more comfortable hiring and investing in people that they know and they know to work well. And so through ROPs and 481 and volunteering, you're really talking to your profs and getting them to understand how you work and if they'd want you in your lab. But more importantly, do you want to be in their lab? Because with graduate school, we talked about before, you're signed in for 1 or 2 years. It's best to have some experience with some of these undergraduate research opportunities to see if research is for you, because it is quite difficult. There are many ways to talk to your profs, though, after class, office hour, email even. And so even if you're wondering how to get an ROP with a prof or a 481 with a prof, talk to your professors. Just get in contact with them. It's so vitally important. They're there, especially in office hour. I hear a lot of professors say that their office hours are deserted. Professors want to talk to you. You should go out because that is your #1 way to get involved in the research field if going through academia is what you're interested in. That being said, this is coming to the end of the lecture. And I hope you guys found it interesting and cool. And I hope that I was helpful helping you guys understand what it's like to be in grad school. Just like undergrads, but with a bit more experience. And if it's something you're interested in, you should definitely pursue it.